The next game to feature Terry Bogard was Fatal Fury Special, which released in September 1993. Unlike the earlier entries in the franchise that tried to weave a cohesive story plot into their fighting tournaments, this game drops the kayfabe entirely and allows the fighters to let loose with the locker room culture and just enjoy a good old-fashioned fighting tournament for funsies. This game took the gameplay formula from Fatal Fury 2 and expanded it with a combo system allowing certain attacks to be chained together. Similarly to Fatal Fury 2, while playing through the arcade mode, you'll have to defeat the entire roster, which has drastically expanded since the last game, with some fighters from Fatal Fury 1 returning with new sprite animations. The most important thing I can say about Fatal Fury Special is that it directly inspired SNK to produce the King of Fighters franchise and can arguably be credited for inspiring the entire crossover guest fighter system we see so much across the modern fighting game genre. If you manage to beat the entire arcade mode without losing a single round, you'll get the honor of fighting the first crossover guest fighter ever in a fighting game, Ryo Sakazaki of the Art of Fighting series. Unfortunately, actually accomplishing this is a monumental challenge on account of the difficulty of the SNK input reacting CPU that was still very much in use for SNK arcade fighters. I didn't get to fight Ryo on my playthrough, but I'll briefly discuss who he is so that you can understand how important this game was to the overall evolution of the fighting game genre, and also to demonstrate why I classify most fighting game lore as kayfabe. Ryo Sakazaki is one of the stars from another SNK franchise known as the Art of Fighting. That series also takes place in Southtown, much like Fatal Fury, and according to the lore, its events occur decades before Fatal Fury 1. So like 1900 if the 1924 ending cards in Fatal Fury 1 and Fatal Fury 2 are to be considered canon? Again, it's all kayfabe, so, you know, don't get hung up on the details, and if you do, try to explain it to me in the comments to correct the lore breaks so that I can understand it. Long story short, Ryo's appearance in Fatal Fury Special was extremely popular and would go on to directly inspire the King of Fighters series, which maybe inspired Capcom to cross over their rosters with Marvel vs. Capcom and may have gone full circle with Capcom vs. SNK. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. The point that I'm trying to make is that the KOF series, which lives on to this very day, owes its very existence to this hidden boss fight found in Fatal Fury Special. The KOF series also totally screws up all the lore for all the franchises involved, resulting in people like me viewing it all as kayfabe to try and make sense of how a guy thrown from a high-rise can survive and how a 16th century samurai can fight in a tournament held in the 21st century. But enough about all that. This isn't a video series about Ryo Sakazaki or the history of fighting game crossover events. It's about the gaming hero history of Terry the legendary Hungry Wolf Bogard, the greatest fighting game character of all time. One thing I forgot to mention in the Fatal Fury 2 section was Terry's appearance, but since this game uses the same sprite animations, I'll cover it here before I forget again. This was the first time Terry Bogard wore his iconic sleeveless shirt, red vest, and his signature stylish red Converse All-Stars. I like to imagine this is because the jacket from the first one got the sleeves torn off during the fight with Geese, and the high-top basketball shoes got in the way of his kick techniques, which is why they were so clunky in Fatal Fury 1. But hey, that's just a theory, a tiny pirate gaming theory. Terry's playstyle and moveset are the exact same as they were in Fatal Fury 2, only everything is significantly faster, more responsive, and less sluggish in this game. The increased play speed also means that Terry won't be able to rely as heavily on his rising tackle technique or frame rate exploits to win the Fatal Fury Special pay-per-view event. Right? We think that's a speculative statement, I believe. We'll see how this pans out for us. Instead, he'll have to employ his entire arsenal of special moves, the Burn Knuckle, the Power Wave, the Rising Tackle, and the Crack Shoot, as well as his desperation technique, the Power Geyser, which I'll actually remember to get footage of during this game's playthrough. Terry's also a total goofball in this game, possibly demonstrating that when not performing in his revenge-filled kayfabe persona, Terry's actually a lighthearted, laid-back sort of dude. Most of his win quotes look like this. What does that even mean? It's gotta be some sort of SNK fighter locker room inside joke that I'm sure all the other fighters find hysterical, but I don't know what the hell is going on here. As for the rest of this game's roster, we'll cover them as we fight them because once again Terry's gonna have to take down the entire locker room if he wants to prove himself as a truly legendary gaming hero. Anyway, with all that out of the way, it's time to see how this tournament played out for this video's titular gaming hero. Just like the prior two installments, Fatal Fury Special lets you choose your first opponent, excluding the boss characters who are also playable for the first time in this game. I decided to fight Terry's stunt double / impersonator, Barry, who wears black instead of blue in this one. The fight was actually really cool, probably because Terry and his doppelganger didn't have to abide by any story set pieces during this tournament due to SNK's relaxation of the kayfabe rules. There was even a double knockout, which is always really fun to see and shows how much more action-packed and intense the fighting was with the new combo system in place. Terry emerged victorious at the end of the bout with one of the most old school fighting game moves ever, the good old fashioned punch to the For the next fight, we're headed down under for another rematch with Big Bear. The pro wrestler who changes his name, throws on a mask, and mixes up his special moveset sometimes between appearances. By this point in his career, Terry was mastering his fighting techniques. Every move was faster, more refined, and seemed to flow seamlessly into the next, making it seem like the Hungry Wolf's growth as a fighter mirrored the gameplay refinement that came with the new SNK combat system. Needless to say, the Big Bear was easily beaten by the burned knuckle of the most hungriest legendary wolf that there ever is, ever was, and ever will be. I'm also going to point out that although the stages in Fatal Fury Special are similar to those of Fatal Fury 2, there have been minor modifications to make them more fun and unique, like the trailer truck now reading Special instead of beer like it did originally. Oh yeah, it said bear. Next, Terry's up against the Muay Thai champion of Japan himself, Joe Higashi. Just like last time they fought, Terry opens up a can of whoop-ass on his best buddy for life because, as I mentioned before, the Fatal Fury team can have only one superstar, and it's definitely not going to be Joe Higashi's goofy ass. Even if Terry does sometimes say stuff like, "Wubba wubba, I'm in the pig today, boy," which is one of the most goofball statements I've ever heard or read out loud. For the next fight, Terry's going up against the Akioku Seiken master, Tung Fu Ryu, who we haven't seen as a fighter since the first game. They even killed him off in the original anime, showing how much the lore has been retconned over the years, or how wacky it gets, or how crazy things are, or why I consider it all to be kayfabe. But since Fatal Fury Special is kayfabe free, he's back, and not gonna lie, he's giving off some super creepy vibes when he's not acting in his lore-accurate persona. Maybe he is more like Master Roshi than I originally thought. The fight also takes place on a completely new stage that has this really cool pan-down sequence that actually starts to get really annoying if you lose and have to restart the fight. I know this because Terry lost a few fights to this creepy old martial arts master, and his moveset of half knuckles, bicycle kicks, spirit dragon punches, and helicopter spinning arm flails. But if winning the KOF tournament in Fatal Fury 2 taught Terry anything, it was to not give up and be a little punk-ass purple-haired whiny little like Krauser was back when he lost. Terry even stopped himself from beating the complete crap biscuits out of the old geezer and won by running out the clock so that the elderly martial artist could maybe live long enough to make it into another game. There's also a less goofy win quote from Terry after the fight where he calls Tung Fu Ryu Master Tan. Who the hell is that? You know what, it doesn't really matter, because next we're up against the franchise's other creepy old geezer, Jubei Yamada. The fight takes place at the Tendo house from Rama 1/2 again, and those annoying partitions are back to block the view. Jubei is back to his old tricks again in this game, spamming pizza frisbees and dash grabs while jumping back and forth between the combat lanes like a no-good yellow-bellied coward. But in the end, Terry did all the SNK ladies a favor by defeating this misogynistic martial arts master so bad that he never showed his face as a competitor again across the fighting game circuit. The next challenger looking for a rematch with the legendary Hungry Wolf was the justice-bound kicking crusader of Korea, Kim Kapwan. The motor scooter guys are back too, and you can still knock them off sometimes while jumping between the lanes. Neat! During the fight, Kim caught Terry with his crazy kick combo desperation technique and managed to win the first set. But in the next fight, Terry was able to turn the tide by resorting to the same strategy that won him the last tournament, by exploiting the invincibility frames of the rising tackle technique. That's right, they're back, and they're better than they ever were before. For the next opponent, Terry's going back to Hong Kong to visit the Sea Palace. You remember the Sea Palace, right? It's where Chang Sin-zan feasts himself into obesity, allowing him to do those rolling cannonball-styled attacks that he's so fond of. There's also this big floating restaurant on a dragon boat in the background to remind you that Chang's not just a super-powered street fighter, but also an extremely wealthy businessman, in case you forgot. After an intense fight between the two practitioners of Akioku Seiken, Terry was able to power wave his way to victory before heading off to fight his little brother again in Italy. And maybe it's due to the relaxed rules on kayfabe, but Andy's really confident going into this fight. Let's see how that plays out for him. It didn't turn out too well, it seems, because Terry handed Andy another Big Brother beatdown, complete with a punch to the to remind Andy once again which Bogard is the best Bogard when it comes to superpowered street fighting. Also, the Mai and Terry stunt performers are still in the background enjoying ice cream, and this time Tung Fu Ryu on a bicycle has been replaced by two of Duck King's Pokemons parading along the river. That's right, bet you didn't know Duck King was also a Pokemon trainer. To be fair, we'll meet a few more Pokemon trainers from the SNK locker room. Even Terry's gonna get a pet monkey before this story is finished. But that's not until way later, because now Andy's stalker/girlfriend wants another shot at Terry for beating up her boy toy again. Mai was so mad that she even went all out and used her desperation move in an attempt to thwart the Hungry Wolf. But Terry's got no time to deal with girls right now, he's got another fighting tournament to win. Plus, he's carrying around way too much emotional damage at this point to bother caring about Andy and Mai's love life. Dude's got his own problems, with the dead daddy issues, the numerous tragic revenge plots entangled in his life, and the hunger inside of him that drives him to compete in as many fighting tournaments as he can. Anyway, for the next fight, we're taking on the Pokemon trainer I mentioned earlier, who's also a returning roster member from Fatal Fury 1, Duck King. And let me tell you something, Duck King came to win this time. Bro's got these crazy dancing attacks that'll put an Australian Olympic breakdancer to shame. They come from out of nowhere, and the input reading on his CPU has gotta be revved up to like over 9,000 because he'll counter almost anything you try to hit him with. The fight even takes place in a new arena, Duck King's personal dance club, complete with flashy lights, backup dancers, and this weird music that I have to assume was produced by the Duck King himself. Despite Duck King's fancy moveset, he was bested by a series of consecutive normal punches to the dick and Terry Bogard's signature super special move, the Power Geyser. Next, Terry went up against his true rival, the stick-wielding British bad boy Billy Khan, who's back again just like everyone else to take another shot at SNK's Worldwide King of Fighters champion. Billy is even more brutal in this game than ever before. With the increased gameplay speed and the new combo system, he can really use that bash and stick of his to punish you for the slightest miscalculation in pixel placement. The fight between these two fatally furious fearsome rivals went on for a while, like a really long time. They were both using all of their strong muscles and most bestest techniques. Billy even spun his stick around so fast that it made a wheel of fire, not to be confused with the Wheel of Fortune or the Wheel of Fate. It seemed like it would never end until with a well-timed jump kick, Terry knocked the British bad boy down for the count and proceeded to the next challenge in this boss rush section of the Fatal Fury Special Tournament. For the next match, we return to the electrified boxing ring of Axel Hawk, the washed-up pro boxer who's still trying to make a name for himself at these King of Fighter tournaments. But the only name worth remembering from this video is Terry Bogard, so after exchanging a bunch of projectile spams, Terry backed Axel into a corner and power waved him until he hit the canvas for good, because I can't remember if we ever see this guy again. But at least Terry won, and now we're off to the next boss fight rematch with Lawrence Blood, the Spanish bullfighter. And he must still be super salty about losing in Fatal Fury 2, because he's not holding back at all in this tournament despite the difficulty level being set to 1. He jumps all over the place and whips Terry with his cape like a jerk in the locker room after a long practice whipping around a wet towel. It's really annoying. But much like how I handle jerks in the locker room, Terry defeated Lawrence with a rising tackle frame exploit, which confused the poor bullfighter's input reading CPU into jumping itself into the super spiral almost game-breaking technique time after time. It's also why I'm not allowed at the gym anymore, too many footprint holes in the ceiling. Anyway, Terry eventually won the fight against Lawrence by sweeping the legs before moving on to face... Wait a minute. This can't be right. It's Geese Howard, the crime lord kingpin of Southtown, back from beyond the grave. Because as far as I'm concerned, he's only dead for now in the kayfabe lore. The fighter Geese Howard is still very much alive and able to compete in non-kayfabe tournaments like this special one. Trust me, if you want to get into fighting games, the kayfabe approach is the only way to make sense of how wacky stuff is gonna get, so just roll with it. We also learned some insight into the career of Terry Bogard's deceased father from Geese's intro quote. Turns out Jeff Bogard was an ice cream maker. The fight against Geese takes place on a new stage, with this sliding door intro that of course looks really neat, but gets really annoying each time you lose and have to restart the fight. Then the music kicks on, that fateful rock beat that triggers my own personal PTSD, as images of Geese kicking Terry's ass in Fatal Fury 1 flash through my mind. Except Geese is even tougher now, because he's faster, his reversal moves are way more consistent, and he can blast fully charged double Rasputins across the arena floor. This is also the first game to introduce Geese's signature super special desperation technique, the Raging Storm. Unfortunately for Geese, he didn't participate in the Fatal Fury 2 tournament, so he was not prepared for the fact that Terry had perfected the rising tackle technique to such a degree of mastery that it could out-prioritize almost all of the Crime Lord Kingpin's close-range attacks. This of course resulted in a victory for the legendary Hungry Wolf, who advanced to the final opponent of the tournament, Wolfgang Krauser. He's not really dead either. I mean, technically in the Fatal Fury lore he is, but outside of that, the fighter is still very much alive, and whenever SNK chooses to put him in the roster, they will. So get used to it. In fact, I think him and Geese were training up a newbie in the SNK locker room at the time to play the villain role for the next few tournaments, some guy named Rugal. So get used to seeing a lot more of these guys in the future, despite their apparent deaths becoming an ongoing story set piece that's reused when the writers are feeling particularly lazy. Just like in Fatal Fury 2, we open up the Krauser fight with his classic lines as we pan down into the castle throne room to the sound of the Krauser orchestra in the background. This fight, however, was way more exciting than the last time due specifically to the gameplay changes combined with Terry's mastery of the rising tackle frame exploit. Terry's literally out here dodging his way through Kaiser waves using those invincibility frames like some sort of Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan with Ultra Instinct. Just think about the sheer dedication it must have taken Terry to reach a point where he could consistently use this super OP technique to inch his way past almost all of Krauser's projectiles. It must have shook Krauser to his very core because unlike the last fight between these two, which took over an hour, this time Terry beat him in under 10 minutes. If anyone ever asks you why Terry Bogard is making so many appearances outside of his own franchise, you point them to this video and tell them it's because of the can of whoop-ass he opened on Wolfgang Krauser in Fatal Fury Special. After the tournament, Terry is cemented once again as the worldwide king of fighters, having proven himself multiple times over the entire Fatal Fury roster up to this point. Unlike the other endings, which end with these weird 1924 ending panels, this one ends with a winner's podium, which then cuts to Terry getting a meal after the fight. He is a hungry wolf after all. We also get these fun little goofball scenes during the credits that I like to imagine shows the characters acting as their carefree friendly selves as opposed to their kayfabe caricatures that we've seen them acting as in earlier games. You know, when the kayfabe's off, they can be themselves, and this is how they act in the locker room, a bunch of goofballs. Despite its non-canonical nature, Fatal Fury Special is by far my favorite of the series so far. The changes to the gameplay and the introduction of the combo system elevated the fighting formula for SNK and paved the way for the innovations that are yet to come. SNK also took note of Terry's rising tackle gimmicks in the last two games, and we'll soon come to find out that more changes are coming to the movesets and the rules regarding the next King of Fighters tournament. And next time, Terry's not just going up against the Fatal Fury locker room, he's competing with the entire SNK locker room's most elite superpowered street fighters from lores past, present, and future. That's right, the lore's about to get really wacky, so get ready to break some more kayfabe and lose all concern for maintaining a structured understanding of SNK's storytelling, because in the next Terry Bogard Game Hero History chapter, we're going to retrospectively reevaluate the first game in the KOF franchise, King of Fighters 94. Neat! Okay, see ya!
Are you okay? Blast the wolf!
Don't forget to like and subscribe. What up? It's me, Tiny Pirate Gaming, and if you're still watching, I just want to say thank you so much for your support. I hope that you enjoyed the video. It took me many months to film the gameplay, research SNK's poster boy, script and voice the series, and then finally edit it all together to produce this Game Hero history of Terry Bogard. Not to mention the days spent overcoming the unforgiving SNK arcade CPU of the early 90s to actually beat as many games featuring the legendary Hungry Wolf as I could get my degenerate fangirl hands on. I'm planning to produce more of the Game Hero History series in the future, so if you enjoyed this one and have any suggestions for who I should cover next from the Game Hero Hall of Justice, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It's the easiest way to show your support, and I really appreciate it. And if you need more Tiny Pirate Gaming in your life for whatever reason, then follow me on Twitch for live streams, or join the Discord where you can discuss gaming, content creation, and more, along with me and the rest of the Hashtag Tiny crew. Although it's usually pretty quiet over there, but, you know, maybe you'll liven it up, so come on in! There's also links to unlisted secret videos that can only be found in the Discord that are related to my personal animation projects, so you can check those out too if you want. If you want early access to all of my videos before they go public, along with other perks and benefits, then you can also consider becoming a channel member. Now a special thanks to the S-Class channel members, Rambo Robbie. That's still the only one? I know there's more members now, but they gotta be S-Class if they want me to read their names. That's the whole point of the perk. I don't know. Maybe we're doing something wrong. Anyway, whether I see you here in the comments, over on the Twitch sphere, or someplace else across the Streamiverse, thank you again so much for watching, and until next time.
Arg, matey. Watch your step. There be a tiny pirate here.
Okay, see ya! don't forget to like and subscribe.